Welcome to episode 36 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy is a podcast about people in Canadian theatre. On Stageworthy, I might talk one-on-one with an actor, director, playwright, or producer, or I might get a group of people together to talk about a specific aspect of theatre in Canada. If you'd like to be a guest on Stageworthy or just want to drop me a line, you can find Stageworthy on Facebook and Twitter at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. If you like what you hear, I hope you'll subscribe on iTunes or Google Music or whatever podcast app you use and consider leaving a comment or rating. My guest this week is Evan Buliung. Evan's been seen on TV in almost every genre and on almost every major stage in Canada, including Canadian Stage, the Stratford Festival, the Shaw Festival, Western Canada Theatre, Mirvish Productions, and Soulpepper. So your family is mostly from the U.S., but your part of the family is living in Canada, or?
We're strictly from Canada. Brantford.
In Brantford.
Yeah.
Is that you spent your life in Brantford?
Yeah, I grew up there. It was the thriving metropolis of Brantford, Ontario.
What did you get the opportunity to do theatre much in Brantford?
A ton of opportunity
to
do theatre in Brantford. Yeah, Brantford was really great and formative. A lot of community theatre, great stuff in high school. I don't know what the arts are like in high school anymore, but at the time it was really great. And I grew up in like Theatre Brantford and Paris Players, and sort of learned the love of it from there. Did you, at what point did you realize it was something that you wanted to do, like, as a living? I was 5. 5 years old, and still working it out in therapy as to why I chose to be an actor. But, I remember I was 5, and I wrote in a little journal that I had that I bought from, when you do the book fairs at school. That I wanted to be an actor, and I'd probably seen something, or whether it was television or what, I was just like fascinated by theater. I remember going into a theater, and when the doors close at the back and everything's about to be prepared, there's a sort of silence and like a real stillness in the room, and I fell in love with that.
And that was like from age 5, and that was like when you said, this is what I want to do?
Yeah. So school kind of became secondary and somewhat redundant. I don't want to. It wasn't fully redundant. I'm sure I learned a lot there, but it was challenging, and I didn't do very well at school. I just spent most of my days in the theater.
I can relate. I mean, I know I have sort of a similar thing where my earliest memory after saying that I want to be a policeman or a fireman or an astronaut. Somewhere from there, it went from that to I want to be an actor.
Yeah.
And I don't quite remember exactly what it was, but I remember sitting in a theater somewhere and watching some kind of show.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of. There's something about the magic of being in that room and like having things there and they're real for the moment. Something about that just sort of made me want to. That's what I wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I wanted to be an archaeologist at one point, but I'm sure that was Indiana Jones
well,
inspired.
Everybody wants to be an archaeologist after Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
When you went to George Brown College, like I did for theater, were you looking at other schools when it came time to look for a theater school to go to?
Yeah, I auditioned for Sheridan, and I got in there because I loved musical theater, and it's sort of what I started in, and did mostly outside of the festivals. So I was like, wow, I got into Sheridan. This is where I want to go, and I was like so pumped to go to Sheridan, And then I went to the George Brown audition, and I remember sitting in 530 King Street West, which if you haven't been to 530 King Street West, it's not there anymore, but it was a rat-infested hole of love. Like it was an incredible black box space, and with holes in the wall everywhere from angry young actors.
Well, I think we all have a lot of affection for that old rundown building.
Absolutely, which is now a condo, like everything else. But I remember sitting in the theater with everyone else who was auditioning, and Peter Wilde came out onto the stage, and he looked at us all and he said, "Look to your left, look to your right. Neither of those people will be working when they get out of this school." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is where I want to be."
Yeah.
Like it just like that kind of passion and honesty was. I was like, "Oh no, I need to be here."
Yeah, I remember similar at my audition. We're in one of the studios upstairs, and there were like I think like maybe 5-6 of us that afternoon, and it was Peter Wilde's "No One Wants You" speech.
Oh yeah.
And that was like the most intimidating thing, but it was like, somebody's. I think it was the fact that he was honest about that.
Mm-hmm.
That it's like. This is what the business is.
Yeah.
That, there's plenty of you. And I think that really spoke to me. While you were at George Brown, can you think of the things that you took away from that course that were formative or important lessons?
Yeah, I mean, I went there when I was 18, right? So, and it was my first time away from school, or from home, and I think I learned more about moving to Toronto than I did from going to theatre school, to be honest. I got myself into a bunch of trouble, got into alcohol and drugs, and it was the 90s and raves and all this stuff. So it became, I think you were even at a party. I remember you being at a party at my house. That we had some crazy times there. So it was sort of the life experience that really, because I figure if you want to act and you know how to act, but when you go into a theater school, while they strip away a lot, I think an actor holds on to their core belief. I like to look at it as like a pilot light, that even through all of the morass of craziness that was going on, I knew that I wanted to do what I wanted to do, So, of course, there's some of the courses drove me crazy, and inevitably I was kicked out in my third year. I was kicked out of class. They kept me to do the shows, which was great fun, and I loved doing the shows. But a classroom setting was very difficult for me to focus on.
Was that in the second half of third year that happened, or was that early in the first?
I think it was early in the first half. It was just before Vocal Mask stuff had to go on, and I was to present my Vocal Mask, and I refused to. Basically just because I hadn't done it, if I'm honest. Anyway, I put it together, but it was too late by that point. So the Vocal Mask is a tense and I don't even know how to describe it anymore. It's definitely stressful. Did you have success with your previous ones, or was it? I did. My first year Vocal Mask was about addiction, which spoke very truthfully to me and to what I was sort of experiencing at the time. And then my second year one was with Wayne Boldy. We did ours on Elvis, which kind of transferred the addiction sort of thing into that. And it was the Elvis one was people really loved it. We really put a lot of effort into it. And of course Wayne's no longer with us, having passed away recently, which was pretty rough.
But for third year, you were just like, no, okay.
Third year, I was doing one on Superman. Okay. So I went from Addiction to Elvis to Superman, and I had it finished, but it was by the time I handed it in, it was too late. And Heiner said it's too late, and I respect that now.
Yeah.
At the time I was kind of devastated. I don't even remember. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. It's funny, the things that were really important when we were in theater school, they're now like, yeah, no, I get why that happened. Yeah. When you finished theater school, the next time that I recall hearing your name was in regards to being a part of We Will Rock You. Was that your next thing, or did you do other stuff before We Will Rock You?
Oh no, I did. I did a bunch of theater in like Grand Bend and Blue Water, a lot of playhouses around the province, and then I did 5 years at Stratford, and 3 years at Shaw, and then Lord of the Rings the musical,
right,
and then We Will Rock You. So I'd had a career leading up to We Will Rock You, like the 5 years at Stratford were very formative and eye-opening, and 3 years at Shaw were. It was all fantastic, but got to work with some really seminal people at Stratford, and my first show there was with Bill Hutt and Brian Bedford and Martha Henry and Tom McCamus, Stephen Lamette, and as a 23-year-old, I was just like, what is going on? Holding on to the proverbial spear and just listening, right? And I often stress that to younger actors, if you have the chance to be in a room with people that have done this for so long, just listen. And because it is an apprenticed craft, which sometimes I think we lose sight of. That it's like, okay, I'm out, let's do it. Ready to go.
I think you're right about that. I mean, listening is a really important thing, but I don't think that I don't recall being told something similar like that when I was in theater school. That we did have the business of acting class and all that stuff, and then nobody said, when you get out and you get your first job, when you're working with people who've been doing it for a while, just pay attention.
Yeah.
Because of course, I mean, when I got out of theater school, I knew every fucking thing.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, we all do. Right? Yeah. It's part of the rite of passage.
Yeah. It takes a little while to realize how little you actually know.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Lord of the Rings, because I did know that you were in Lord of the Rings, but I think I misorder those things in my mind. And I always, Lord of the Rings is one of those things I forget happened.
So do I. Purposeful forgetting sometimes.
Well, I mean, because Lord of the Rings was like this hugely ambitious thing that just didn't quite do what everybody was hoping it would do.
Yeah.
What was it like being a part of that at the time that it was playing, when it was the next thing and then it didn't become that thing?
It was probably one of the darkest periods of my life, I think. It was one of those things when I got it, I was over the moon. Like, I had auditioned for it with a number of other people, and I think the fact that they wanted me to play Aragorn, I was like, oh my god, like I never play these parts, right? Like I'm always the buddy, the friend, the funny guy, the sad guy, the kind of like crazy guy. Yeah. And all of a sudden they want me to play the sort of troubled hero. I was like, oh my god. And I literally had just come from Shaw doing Major Barbara, playing Charles Lomax, like this, and my Barbara, you left off your uniform, like that kind of thing, right? To right into playing Aragorn. And it was the first month was just the Battle of Helm's Deep. That's all we rehearsed on the Revolve, which was a triple revolve with 17 elevators on it, and each elevator had like a pink square, red diamond, blue circle, so we knew where to jump to where. It was, the director Matthew Warchus, to his credit, he said, I'm going to ask you to do something like Olympic. And I was like, okay. And, it's very, I was 30 or 31, and I was gung-ho for it, right? But, yeah, it became clear The critics beat us up. It was a big workshop, really. I mean, it was musicals need workshopping, and this was no different. And it was a giant, it's a giant fucking thing. Like, I'm sure they didn't put Les Miserables together in 4 months. And it's just as big, if not bigger. So it was an incredible cast of wonderful Canadians and and a few Brits. But by the time we got to opening, we were rehearsing 7 days a week, all day, every day, with no time for rest, recuperation, reflection, anything. So it was. I went into a very dark place. I know I'm not alone, but I have my reactive quality, especially at the time, was to sort of react outwards and inwards at the same time. It was just sort of this explosion. When they left to take it to England, I suggested that they hire circus performers to do it and not actors, because it was, I know it wasn't taken to heart, and I was badly damaged. I didn't come out of my apartment after it finished for about a month and a half, and I had people that came over and sort of like took care of me, basically. Like, it was, physically, emotionally, spiritually, just bankrupt. I wish I could, I do look back on it fondly at the people that were in it. I wish I could have handled it better. I wish I could have been stronger, but it just took over. I think it's the theme of the show too, right? I mean, it comes from his experiences in World War I. Like, it's a dark fucking thing. And it was brutal.
The brutal? I mean, obviously having that show not do what was expected of it, success was brutal. But performing it sounds like it was just as difficult.
Yeah, it was. I mean, when we first put it together, it was almost 5 hours long, right? So sometimes we would do 2 shows in a day. So it was like, it was totally insane. Like, it was, we would come off stage at the end of the first show, and there'd be bags of Swiss chalet just lining the hallways for us to eat. And, poor Mike Terrio playing Gollum just sat there in his fucking Gollum rubber costume and eating chicken. And, it was supposed to be successful. And, when we went to the design presentation, it was gorgeous. And we were like, holy fuck, how can this not work? Well, storytelling, like, what is the story you're trying to tell? It doesn't matter how much shit you throw at the stage.
And that it wasn't really workshopped. It went from first iteration to just straight into full performance.
Well, it was workshopped in England. I shouldn't say it wasn't workshopped. I mean, the creative team that put it together, they're fantastic, and they put together Matilda, which is obviously doing extraordinarily well. And in hindsight, I love them all very much and respect them deeply. But it's I sometimes akin it to the Canadians going over the top at World War I. Send the Canadians over. Let's see what the machine guns do to them. So it had been workshopped in England, but it's just so big. There's just so many stories to tell it.
I often wonder. I mean, I didn't get the opportunity to see it, but I often wonder, how do you take those 3 books, which at the time were also the movies, and condense that into a 3-hour performance, which is a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge, and Matthew wanted it to be like Shakespeare meets Cirque du Soleil, but you're challenging the theater gods a bit by doing that. I could see it as a Cirque du Soleil imagery piece, and that's what they had. I mean, the sets were fantastic. They were so stunning, and costumes. Rob Howell, who designed it, was just fucking brilliant, and he was actually one of the most genuinely graceful guys on the team. When we had the Dora Awards, I think he won for design, and he was very complimentary to the Canadians, more so than anyone else. But I don't know how you do it. We cut so much. You start cutting, and we got it down to about 3.5
I think, or something. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Because that show and what happened with it kind of, in a way, changed the face of theater in Toronto for a while, in a way that we're still recovering from.
Yeah.
Because Mirvish Productions didn't really do any self-produced stuff for many years after that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really from just a production point of view, it's really kind of disappointing that show wasn't able to do what they hoped for it to do. After you finally came out of your apartment, was it hard for you going back into the audition room?
Yeah.
After that?
Yeah, I was pretty much. I remember saying to my agent, "Just get me on a cruise ship or something." She was like, "No, we're not gonna do that." Nothing against cruise ships, but she's just like, "That's not your focus." And I was just looking for something that was easier, you know, like it. I went into a pretty dark place for a number of months, and I'd actually been sober quite a number of years at that point, and that fell off briefly, thankfully. Got back onto the train, but and then you just go back to your point about it affecting Canadian theatre. I remember when the Ontario government gave Lord of the Rings $3.5 million as an investment, right? And a lot of people invested, and it wound up costing about $50 million, the whole show. It started, I think it was budgeted at 29, and it went up to $50 million. And I don't think they took into consideration our unions here, as well as the crew unions. Like the crew were miraculous, and they were literally working 24-hour shifts through the night, and setting up and doing all this stuff. Like it was a yeoman's effort on their part, but it cost them a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps I try to look at what the opportunity is in that, and now the Mirvishes are creating their own sort of things, at the Panasonic and such like that. But it had been a number of years of such successful musical theater that it was like the Lord of the Rings. Let's tempt fate one more time and just go like that one step further. And it was a bit like the Titanic. It did better in England than it did here. And Kevin Wallace always called it England its spiritual homeland, which very well maybe. But everyone got stung across the board. Everyone lost a lot of money, and I think Ed was still alive then.
Yes.
David, it was transitioning into David's hands, I think, and so in a way, I think it's probably a good thing that happened, because what David has been able to do is make some real astute decisions in terms of what they bring in, both him and David Musey, and they've been more successful. And I think We'll Rock You was the next. It was pretty much the next thing.
Yeah.
And and they asked me to come in for that, and I was like, no, I don't want to do it anymore. And they were like, just come in, it's fun.
Yeah. Was it already running when you came in?
No. No, it had been running in England.
Right. But you were part of the first cast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember. I mean, I worked at the Edinburgh Theatre for a while, a couple of years ago, and people who were working as ushers who still worked were still working there, who worked during We Will Rock You, and they would still talk about how crazy the audiences were for that show.
Oh yeah.
What was it like performing for audiences that were drinking at their seats and there? It was like a concert for them.
It was a total joy, man. I mean, that experience was flipped on its head from the previous one for me. I had the greatest night of my life in that, which I'll get to. But We'll Rock You was, I got to play this silly British villain.
Yeah.
That he's just kind of an ass, and I love doing that. And I grew up on a hearty feeding of Monty Python and Steve McQueen. So it's like that kind of mix of genres. But you know, the audience just went apeshit, and some people came and saw it like 10, 11, 12 times.
Yeah.
I just remember at the end in the curtain call, like they gave the audiences glow sticks, right?
Yes,
to kind of, as opposed to lighters.
Yes, yeah.
But in the curtain call, they all threw them. So we would come out for curtain call in the darkness, and all of a sudden it was like Braveheart, man. It was like flaming fucking arrows come flying through the air, and we all had to like. You're like, shit, fucking, there's just like hundreds of these like hard glow sticks being thrown at us. And, you know, you dodge, you're covering your eyes, you don't get your eyes poked out. But the audience went crazy for it. Like, you know, like Ontario loves its classic rock.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Q107. It's, so, and Queen came, right? They came to hang out with us and play with us sort of near the end of my tenure on it.
What was that like?
It was, that's the greatest night of my life. And, Brian May, Roger Taylor, with Ben Elton came, and they came to play for our 100th show. So, and they'd been there for a few days, and they did a sound check, and they cranked everything up because they're deaf. And they can't fucking hear anything. So after they left, they're like, okay, guys, we're just going to turn it back down a little bit. Because, of course, they've been playing rock the whole time, their whole life. So, but I remember coming downstairs into the bowels of the Ed Mirvish Theatre, which was the Canon at the time, and I walked into my dressing room, and Brian May and Roger Taylor and Ben Elton were standing in my dressing room, because it was right across from the stage management office, and I was just like, what the fuck? And Brian May, you know, with his super long hair, he's like, hey man, I just want to say, like, I really want to apologize for the sound quality of the show right now. It's not very loud. I'm like, whatever, man. Like, you can do whatever you want. And like, here, can we sign my Queen posters that are on the wall? And they did. And but they were. I remember stumbling into his room at one point. He was in there with his daughter, and I was going in to warm up, and I had to hit high A's. It was like just a nightmare. But I walked in. I was like, oh, sorry. And he's like, no, come on in, man. Come on in. It's like, I just want to say, like, I'm really excited you guys are here. So he's like, oh, thanks, man, thank you. And he started talking. He's like, so who's your favorite band? I was like, Radiohead. Radiohead's my favorite. And he's like, oh, I love those guys. They're so great. I'm just like, holy fuck. So we got out, and he did a sound check that day, and the cast just stood around Brian May, and he had his guitar, and he uses a silver pound note or whatever, a shilling as a pick. That's how he gets that crazy sound by using that. And we were just like, play Fat Bottom Girls, play Show Must Go On, play Killer Queen, and he would just like play out these riffs. And so that night they played with us in Bohemian Rhapsody. And they came, Roger Taylor came swinging out on his drums, and we're all singing and rocking it out. And then we sang The Show Must Go On, which is not in the show. But I got to sing, the bridge right before the guitar solo. So I went out and I sing the bridge. My soul is painted with the wings of butterflies. And then Susie McNeil sings "I Can Fly," and then Brian May goes into his guitar solo, and I stood back to back with Brian May and did air guitar while he played the guitar solo. It was, and it's on video somewhere. It made me fucking howl. I was like, I can't believe I'm doing air guitar back to back with Brian May of Queen. So that was the greatest night of my life.
Nice.
Yeah. Loved it.
Since then, have you been back to Stratford and Shaw ever since?
Yeah.
You're older than you were when you went there the first time. What's the main difference going back to those festivals now than it was when you first went?
Well, with any company, there's challenges in any business, and Stratford is a big organization. Shaw, a bit smaller, but confidence, right? Like I can, but I still have that actor, that never goes away. That actor insecurity of like,
of course,
what's, that you still struggle with. It's like validation. You're
Yeah.
looking for validation,
Yeah.
which is some sort of emotional throwback to, you know, whatever has gone on in the past.
Yeah.
And I still, you know, when I see Martha Henry, I still feel like a 23-year-old. I remember Simon Bradbury saying that to me at Shaw. He was like, it's really difficult. Sometimes I run into Chris Newton and I feel like I'm a 19-year-old again. Like, I just don't know how to. So you still do, right? Like, I'm 41 years old and I still feel sometimes when I go back there like a little kid.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm working on. Like, I look at some of the greater people I really admire there, like Peter Donaldson, who's no longer with us. Those kinds of guys that were just like stalwarts, you know, and it's like, no, you talk to me if you want it, like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
It's not inherently in my bones. So it's I think you know, certainly you play different parts.
Yeah.
But you also have the experience to bank on. Like, I can open up a book of Shakespeare and read it and know what I'm reading, without a doubt, you know, and that's cool. Like, at one point in my life I hated Shakespeare, and then another point in my life I didn't understand how it worked.
Yeah.
And now it's...
Did you, I mean, at that point in your life when you hated Shakespeare, I mean, it's a big part of the training at George Brown, or at least it was at the time.
Yeah.
Did you hate it then, or were you learning to like it, or?
No, I liked it then. I mean, in high school, you know, but nobody knows how to teach Shakespeare in high school. Like,
nobody knows how to teach Shakespeare in high school, so you probably shouldn't be teaching Shakespeare in high school, at least not the way that we do.
Yeah.
You shouldn't treat it like literature.
No, it isn't. It needs to be dusted off, and I don't know that Julius Caesar is the right way to go either for kids.
The plays that they teach the kids are like just, why are we teaching them these ones?
Yeah,
I can understand Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet, if taught right, can mean something to high school students. But why are we teaching them? Why are we teaching them Macbeth? And why are we teaching them?
Well, I think it's also I think the fascinating thing with that is that it's a throwback, right?
Yeah.
It's at one point students understood what was going on in Julius Caesar, but now it's the attention span or whatever. Like, it's over the years we've progressively changed the doctrine at schools, and you know, nobody knows who the fuck Caesar is, right? Like, especially in school, and they don't give a fuck about political. If you could mirror it with what's going on in the United States, or what's going on even in Canada with Harper.
Yeah.
That should have happened. That's terrible.
I actually think, you know, you could probably have some success now if you were to make an allegory between one of those plays and Game of Thrones.
Absolutely.
You might be able to get people to understand better what's going on.
Yeah, and I think Anthony Chimerica even put that in his Macbeth notes this year, where he compares it to Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
But you know, the wonderful thing about Game of Thrones. Oh, I'm thinking not Game of Thrones. I'm thinking of House of Cards.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah.
You know, where he compares it to that. But even if you go back further to the Ian Richardson House of Cards, the original British version, it's so Shakespearean, and he's so Machiavellian, and such a Richard III character. Like, his takes to the camera are much more arch. You know.
Yeah.
Just because he comes from that world. I guess Spacey does too. But Game of Thrones. God, I love that show.
You and everybody else.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was wondering, as you were talking about, when you meet Martha Henry, you feel like you're like a 20-year-old again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that sort of feeling, and I think that any of us who meets one of those people that we looked up to, we will always be that kid that looked up to them.
Yeah.
But do you think that helps when you're dealing with like the 19, 20-year-olds who are coming in now, that you sort of can remember how you were when you were just starting out?
Yeah, I think, like, I don't come across a ton of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty much a hermit, so it's no. I do. I try to think back, but I also try to I treat them as peers. I don't treat them like I'm Bill Hutt or something, right? Like, I think some of those guys, it was a carryover from the old British system of like, I am the great I am, and not out of any arrogance per se necessarily, but it's it's just the way it was. Whereas now it's like, no, man, it's like inclusionary, and it's like there's no ageism, there's no like. So although I don't hang out with them on a pure basis, like I don't go to the bars and complain about theater because I couldn't think of a fresher hell.
Yeah.
But I sometimes maybe forget that they're starting out, and I'm wary of giving advice. I'm wary of, unless it's asked of me, because I don't want to come across as like, you know what, when I was your age. Because it's not good, but it can be like if someone has a question, and I think that's something that's missing sometimes. It's like, what are your questions as a young actor? Like, I remember as a young actor going to actors that were older and being like, what is this, and how do you do this, and where do you go with this, and like, and really asking the deep, hard questions if you want to be an actor. As opposed to, I got this, I can handle this. You know?
Well, I think that's an important quality, is being able to ask questions instead of worrying that I have to act like I know this.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you anywhere if you don't actually know it.
No, exactly. Yeah. Exactly, right. And questioning, even in rehearsal, I got myself in so much trouble in some rehearsals because I remember we were doing All's Well That Ends Well when Richard Manette was directing it, and I was one of the Dumaine brothers, and Pericles, the character, is, you know, he's covered in ribbons and bows, and he's very flamboyant, and he's sort of leading Baron down this other path or whatever. He's sort of, and the other guys are around, like, and then there becomes the gulling of Pericles, right, where they trick him, and to me, I was like, in a modern sense, this is kind of like a gay bashing. Like they're going after this guy for being flamboyant, and so I brought it up in rehearsal. I was like, this is kind of like a gay bashing, and it was like a dead silence in the room, like, what? but it was like a question that I had. You know, I wasn't making a comment on anything, but those kinds of things, I you know, if it's guided towards the whole group and towards the presentation of the piece as opposed to yourself, then fucking fire away. Yeah. You know, it's when you start going, I think my character needs, or it's like, shut the fuck up, man.
I think it's important because then you have to know if you're all playing the right tone in a situation like that. Like, how far are we going with this moment?
Absolutely. You know? Should we be making the audience uncomfortable? Absolutely. Yeah. Should we be making them question their own beliefs and their own actions? Absolutely. What the fuck's the point of doing theater otherwise?
Yeah. I sometimes think that we don't. I don't see enough of that in some of the big houses. We're very safe and we're very very careful. Don't want to make people too uncomfortable. A little bit, but not too much. Yeah. I haven't seen anything in a big theater in a long time that has made me feel particularly uncomfortable. I've seen more of that in indie theater in some small houses.
Absolutely, you know? Absolutely. Did you see what's it, Nirbaya? How do I say it? Nirbaya? This is terrible. At Harbourfront. It was a piece out of India about that girl that was raped on a bus with her friend, and she died. It was a gang rape, and it's basically 6 women's stories out of India. They're from India, except for Pamela Sin, who's from Canada. Yeah. Basically, their stories of rape and what happened. And I kid you not, I've never experienced anything like it in the theater. And it was like literally at the end, I was so devastated. I turned to the guy beside me. We turned and looked at each other, and he said, "Hi, my name is Mohammed." I was like, "My name's Evan." It was like we just needed to fucking connect with someone, like on a, and we shook hands, and it was like we just witnessed that, didn't we? Yeah. Like that kind of theater. Even like Theater Smith Gilmore do some things where it's just like there's no sets, nothing, just like actors, and it's devastating.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't have to be sex, and it doesn't have to be that, but it's good to see theater that challenges every now and then. Yeah. When we're fed a lot of very safe stuff. trying to think. You did a show at, was it with Can Stage recently? Was the...
Yes.
What was the name?
Chimerica.
Chimerica. I knew you
Yeah.
had that. That show, I think, if I recall, there were mixed reviews, but
Yeah.
I know the actors in it were really passionate about it.
Yeah.
I didn't see all the reviews. I know there was some stuff there, but that show I think was really important to the people who were performing it, and a lot of audiences I think enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get the sense that there was like the mix of responses to it?
I thought you said we weren't going to talk about Chimerica. I thought I gave you a list of things we weren't going to talk about. No. It was quite a mixed reaction to it. I'd known for about a year that I was going to do it, and I read it, and I really wanted to do it because of the last page of the play, and it's a big play.
Yeah.
It's 3 hours plus, and I got to the last page, and I just was like, it blew me over, and I'd kind of not read my character, to be honest, what was involved, and it was really hard. It was really difficult. It was, it was a big show.
Yeah.
It was a big set. It was big lights. It was big expectations. Again, it felt somewhat like, I remember getting out there for tech and thinking, my shoulders went up because I was like, fuck, this is like Lord of the Rings. Everything's big.
Yeah.
And I feel lost out here. And there was a few blow-ups where I was like, I can't hear the other goddamn actors on the fucking stage. How can I perform? And reviews were mixed, right? And we cut 20 minutes off the show without making cuts of the script. So that was the actors, and I was so proud of our cast, like just wonderful people, and there's a lot of talk of and rightly so, about diversity in the theater, and I think that's going to change everything for the better. Different stories, new voices, and probably some more raw experiences than our usual British experiences, which were fairly, we won all the wars, don't you know? Like everything, so there's nothing really wrong.
Yeah. I look forward to we're seeing a bit more diversity in various stages. I know Stratford is making a big, they've made a real effort this year to have a little more diversity on their stage. I kind of like theaters being taken to task for having seasons made up of all white males. I think that we will only benefit from more diverse voices on our stages.
Yeah.
But I think that it will bring out more audiences. That's for sure.
Certainly.
Certainly. People go to see themselves on stage in a lot of ways, and if we're only talking to one aspect of who we are, then I think that we're limiting ourselves.
Well, and the demographic of schools that go to Stratford and Shaw are mostly non-white.
Well, there's a lot of schools that are predominantly non-white.
Yeah.
And we have to speak to them as much as we have to speak to everybody else.
Yeah. And until we get to the day when someone looks up on the stage and they go, whether it's black, white, yellow, whatever it is, they can go, oh, I identify with this person as being a person.
Yes. Yeah.
As opposed to what color they are. Then we won't have to worry about that anymore. But it doesn't feel like we're there. We're in some transitional stage.
No, we're in a transitional stage where I think, for a long time, their phrase "colorblind casting" has been thrown around. I don't think it exists as much as we want it to.
No.
Because we're still worried about, well, they don't look like father and daughter. They don't look like mother and son. Because we can't cast him because he's black. She's white, and I think that we have to get away from all of that. I think that audiences will accept whatever is presented as long as the actors on stage believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't happen in film, right? I mean,
No.
there's whitewashing going on in film that's quite extraordinary.
That's a whole other topic.
Absolutely. But they're hiding, you know, they're hiding in behind large towers, right?
Yes,
whereas theater is ground level shit. Like there's nowhere to hide. So it's like our voices are loud and they're carried through amongst all of our peers.
Yeah. And also the difference is that the people who are watching are in the room.
Yeah.
They're there, so their reaction matters. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
After Chimerica, I mean, you were talking earlier, you're working on a TV show right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know of any other theater on the horizon for you? Or?
No, I've given up the theater. I've learned all I can. I've stopped learning. No, there's possibly some things down the road, but I haven't signed on to anything yet. It's I really, like after Chimerica, it took another like month and a half to kind of come out from underneath that. I'm learning. I had Barbara Gaines, who's the artistic director at Chicago Shakespeare Theatre, said to me years ago. We were doing Macbeth, and I was playing Macduff, and she said to me, "You have to be careful." And I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean?" She said, "You're an actor who has to be a bit more careful about what you're doing." And I was kind of like, half of me was flattered, half of me was concerned. You know, like what she meant by that. And you know, the actors that I really looked up to growing up were Brent Carver and Stephen Ouimet and you know, McCamus and these guys that were able to sort of just, especially Brent.
Yeah.
You know, no one can do what Brent Carver does.
Yeah.
He just is.
Yeah.
He's an open wound. He's whatever. He just presents exactly what's in front of him at the time, or what's inside of him at the time. And I think sometimes I was like, I want to be more like that. I want to be more like that. And I knew I had it inside of me to do that. But it's a dangerous thing, right? Because you take on, which I did in Chimerica, I took on the characters' foibles and faults as my own. You know, as an actor, you're going, okay, what part of this can I learn about myself?
Yes,
and I really did. And I had one woman stop me at the stage door of Chimerica, and she pointed in my face and she said, "I'm so glad you lost." And I was just like, and I couldn't get out the door. There were people blocking the door, and I was just like, "Oh, get me the fuck away from this woman! What have I done? What have I done?" But I sometimes forget that it's just a character, right? And so it takes a long time to sort of recover from these things. So as I'm getting older, I'm going, well, quality of life. I'm grateful as fuck for the opportunities, but then I do have to be careful about going into these sort of realms. You know. Yeah. Or find ritual to sort of let it go, and I'm terribly undisciplined at doing that. So
it can be difficult to let that stuff go.
Yeah.
Especially when you're going to dark places and things like that. That's very difficult to let go of sometimes, especially if you're doing it for a long period of time. Like in independent theater, most of what I do is like we run for 2 weeks. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So 2 weeks and I'm done, but then if the show runs longer, like a season, you have to figure out how you're gonna like let that crap go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just tend to play those parts at Stratford. Like Edgar, I've played twice, and Tom Joad in The Grapes of Wrath, and last year playing Pericles, which was so like it's just so much sadness. Yeah. Just so much sadness. And I actually got pneumonia halfway through the season. And I was out for 2 weeks. If you've never had pneumonia, don't get it. It's fucking terrible. And I was so sick. But it is like they say, sadness lives in the lungs, right? And it just got in there, and it's fun it's cathartic to play around with that stuff. But it's also a bit you're walking the line. Like I think of Vivien Leigh, who wound up in not to compare myself to Vivien Leigh, but like those sorts of actors, they literally died in an insane asylum. Yeah. And she was fucking great. Yeah.
When you're doing a role like that in Grapes of Wrath, and you're the sad all the time, but you're also playing other roles throughout the season in Rep. How are you going from one to another? Like, if you're holding on to the sadness so much, but you have to then go on and play another role, how are you letting go of the sadness but coming back to it?
Well, Grapes of Wrath was tough because I was so angry all the fucking time. I was just so, and I remember I used to snap at actors on stage. A wonderful guy, Kyle Galemba, I remember I would snap at him on stage because we'd get out there, and I felt so bad about it, but we would get out there and they're all like, you fucking Okies, you fucking go back to where you come from, right? And just constant. And I just would sometimes just be like, and like snap at them, right? It was just like so much, you know, and you're researching about migrant workers in Canada and how poorly we fucking treat them here. And I keep hearing this shit about Leamington. It's like, oh, the Heinz ketchup factory's closing. Oh yeah, well, check out what you're doing to the migrant workers in that city. They didn't even let their schools come to see the Grapes of Wrath in Leamington.
Really?
Yeah, they wouldn't let them come because of obviously the themes of Grapes of Wrath. But you know, you balance it with the other show. It's almost like a joy to, like Pericles last year. I got to balance it with doing Carousel and playing Jigger and Carousel. It's like blow me high, blow low, like doing that kind of thing. So it's you know, and to be around the energy of the musical theater realm as well is so uplifting. So it is finding balance. But these, I don't know. These things leave marks on you, and it's a tough job. Don't do it. Yeah. Be a banker, man. Like, fucking work 16 hours a day. Like, no, I know it's totally.
It's like, I mean, the thing is, the people who do it because they can't envision doing anything.
No, you really can't.
And that's,
as Peter told us.
Yeah,
right?
of course, yeah.
He said it to us like 25 years ago. If you can do anything else, go fucking do it.
Yeah.
And we were like, I can't.
Yeah.
And most people did.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that I went to school with that don't doing it anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
and leading happy, useful lives with families and money
I mean, I do. I balance. You know, I've got. You know, I have my day job, but I make my own stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, I gave it up for like 5 years, a long time ago, I was like, well, that's it. I'm going to work, I'm going to have a job and do all this stuff.
Oh, cool.
You know, after about 5 years, I was like, I can't not be doing this anymore.
Really?
You know?
You had no other output for like creativity?
No, I took it all away. I just got a job in a call center. I was like, this will be my life now. And then I worked my way up and I would become, I don't know, I didn't want to be like a CEO, but I was like, I'm not going to do theater anymore. Yeah. I burned out. I produced a double bill of some Shakespeare and was really, I threw a whole lot into that. And then by the time it was over, I was like, wait, nope, I hate myself and I hate all the work that I'm doing. So I had to stop doing it for a while. Mm-hmm. But that's because we always throw ourselves into what we're doing. Yeah. With
blind abandon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I know an actress, a famous Canadian actress, who she played Desdemona, and the actor playing Othello was like just terrified her. Right, this is many years ago, but terrified her so much to the point where she gave up act, like just didn't act for a year. She had to step away from acting for a year just because it was. It's psychologically fucking insane. Yeah. What we do to ourselves.
I often think that we need to do that sometimes, you know, I mean, I know that we have to hold on to it and keep playing the part, but we also need to take care of each other.
Yeah.
When we're doing, especially when we're doing difficult shit. Yeah. Like, we need to make sure that, you know, if I'm terrified of you, well, we should probably deal with that.
Yeah,
We're still a team here.
Yeah.
But then sometimes we get caught up in what we're doing on stage. Yeah. And that's part of the job, I guess.
Totally. Well, and it needs to come from the top down too, right? Like if like I love those teachers like Michael Mawson and Peter Wilde and stuff that scared me, that gave me the honest. It's like mindless. What you're doing right now is mindless. I'm gonna go have a smoke and you figure out what the fuck you're doing wrong, right? Like that kind of thing. I appreciate it. I love the movie Whiplash just because I was like, I fucking get this. Like it's a bit extreme, but I get it.
Yes, yeah.
But then, you know, there does need not coddling, but from top-down directors, artistic directors, whoever, to really like you don't have a crew of the Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah.
You have a crew of misfits, deeply emotional and sensitive individuals.
Yes.
And we are not businessmen. We are artists.
Yeah.
And to really sort of take that in and go, how do I talk to these people each separately is a gift that only a few have.
Yeah. Well, we're basically out of time.
Are we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thanks. Thank you so much for talking with me today. This is
Yeah,
great.
yeah. No, my pleasure. Thank you.